Welcome to STEAM class. This week, while we're in the middle of fall, I thought it would be a perfect time for a Scarecrow challenge. So let's change the size so that we can see the challenge. So whenever we have a challenge, we start out with our objectives. Our content objective for this week is, I can create a three-dimensional scarecrow by following the material constraints. I'm going to explain that word constraints on another slide. It means limitation, that you can only use the items that are listed. Our language objective for this week is I can orally describe what things in the story are living and non-living. So this week we're going to be doing a full STEAM lesson. So we're going to have some science, some literature, and a little bit of art all thrown in together, art and engineering all thrown in together to create our project for the week. So the first part, we're going to be focusing on science. So as you listen to the story, you need to decide if the objects in the story are living or non-living. So if you're looking at the two objects in the picture, Miss McCormick and the Scarecrow, are they living or not living? So let's focus on the Scarecrow. Does the Scarecrow need food and water? Does the Scarecrow grow and change? Can the Scarecrow move by itself? Or is Miss McCormick helping it? And does the Scarecrow reproduce or have young of its own? Let's think, and we call that predict. So using our evidence, what do we think? You're right, the Scarecrow is not living. So when you're looking at the objects in the story, you need to decide if the objects are living or not living. In the story, we're going to have a characters and a setting. The characters in this story today are a little Scarecrow, the little Scarecrow boy, his mother, his fierce father, and the crows that they're trying to keep away from their corn. And the setting is in the cornfield. So this is our literature connection. We're going to listen to a wonderful story. One of my favorite things to do is to read or listen to a great story. So we're going to listen to the story called The Little Scarecrow Boy.
The Little Scarecrow Boy by Margaret Wise Brown, illustrated by David Diaz. Once upon a time, in a cornfield, there lived a scarecrow and his scarecrow wife and their little scarecrow boy. Every day of the world, Old Man Scarecrow went into the cornfield to make faces at the crows. And every day of the world, his little scarecrow boy wanted to come too. And every day of the world, Old Man Scarecrow said, "No, no, little boy, you can't go. You're not fierce enough to scare a crow. Wait till you grow." So every day, the little Scarecrow boy stayed at home all day and just grew. Every day out in the field, Old Man Scarecrow waved his arms and made terrible faces. He made such terrible faces that the crows nearly lost their feathers at the sight of him there, and they flew far away, far away. Every evening when the sun went down, Old Man Scarecrow came rattling home, and all evening he sat in his scarecrow house, teaching his little scarecrow boy how to make fierce faces. Old Lady Scarecrow whistled through her straw teeth at the looks of him there. But early in the morning when the sun came up, it was the same old no. "No, little boy, you can't go. You're not fierce enough to scare a crow. Wait till you grow." So the little Scarecrow boy stayed at home all day and just grew. Then, one day, after the little boy had learned all 6 of his father's terrible faces so that he could make them one after the other, he decided to run away. Early the next morning, he would go out into the cornfield and he would frighten a crow. So before the sun was up, or Old Man Scarecrow was up, or Old Lady Scarecrow was up, the little Scarecrow boy slipped out of bed, dressed quietly on tiptoe, and went quietly out of the house, over to the cornfield, up on his father's post, in his father's place. It was a fine, shiny morning with the sun gleaming green down the corn blades. Crows circled in the air far away over the trees. The little Scarecrow boy waved his arms through the air. He had never felt fiercer in all his life. And then came flying a big black crow. Oh, oh, oh! The little Scarecrow made his first fierce face, and still came flying the big black crow. Oh, oh, oh! The little Scarecrow boy made his second fierce face, and still came flying the big black crow. His third face. Oh, oh, oh! Time to go! So the little Scarecrow boy ran, and he ran down the corn rows. The black flapping wings made a noise now, and looking back, he could see the blue sky through the ragged feathers of the nearest crow. He ran and he ran. Then he stopped, his fourth face, and still came flying the big black crow. So he ran and he ran and he ran and he ran, and the crow flew and he flew and he flew and he flew. And the little Scarecrow boy ran. And then he made his fifth and next to fiercest face of all. And still came flying the big black crow. The little boy had only one face left now and hardly any breath. Even so, he stopped, and with his arms stretched wide above his head and his fingers drooping on his hands, he gave the big crow the sixth face. And whoa! The old crow flew backwards through the air, feathers flying everywhere, until there wasn't even the shadow of a crow on the land. A scarecrow at last. The little Scarecrow boy knew that he was as fierce a scarecrow as there was in all the cornfields in all the world. And then he saw a shadow in front of him, and he looked up, and there behind him was Old Man Scarecrow, his father. And his father was proud of his little boy who had made all six faces at the crows. And he picked up his little Scarecrow boy in his Scarecrow arms, and they went home to breakfast. And when the little Scarecrow grew up, he was the fiercest Scarecrow in all the fields in all the world. The end.
Wow, that was a great story. Whoops. I guess we wanted to hear that applause. All right, so let's go back to the slideshow and continue on with the directions for our challenge. So we're asking ourselves, how can we use the listed materials to create a three-dimensional scarecrow design? So a two-dimensional shape is something that is flat, like a square, pentagon, a circle, a hexagon, or one of my favorites, the three-sided triangle. We can use these shapes on our three-dimensional creature, like here's my three-dimensional scarecrow, and he does have some circles on him, but most of his body is three-dimensional. So how do we turn that into three-dimensional? A three-dimensional object is not flat, like a cube, a sphere, a cone, or my particular favorite, the rectangular prism. Here is an example of some 2D and 3D shapes from our last challenge, and these come from our wonderful kindergartners. I love how each of these students worked and did their best job to make their own creation. You can tell they made it themselves with maybe a little bit of support from their families to get out the paint and materials. So here you see a two-dimensional pumpkin that's blue with a red smile. And here you see another two-dimensional pumpkin, or we call it jack-o'-lantern because it has a face. And here is a three-dimensional pumpkin that is not flat. So how are we going to create those three-dimensional scarecrows? Well, one thing we want to think about is what kind of face we're going to put on them. Are we going to create a friendly or fierce scarecrow out of the items we have at home? My scarecrow here is friendly, and we can tell by the smile on his face, his bright sparkling eyes, and his cheerful clothes. As we're making this, we're going to be able to create a 3D base by using something that is already 3D or changing a piece of paper to make it 3D. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to make my picture just a little bit bigger so you can see me and the slide at the same time. All right, great. So for the base, you get to choose one and only one of these. You can start the base or the main part of the scarecrow with either a cardboard tube. So those could be toilet paper, empty toilet paper rolls or empty paper towel rolls, or a box. Kleenex is always a great one that we often have around our house. Or a piece of paper, which we all have because we have notebooks at home and we could always tear out a piece of paper. But wait a minute, you're thinking, Miss McCormick, a piece of paper isn't 3D. So how can I turn this flat piece of paper into something that's 3D? Well, one way you could do it is you could roll it, and you're right, it's Miss McCormick's favorite shape again. It's a cylinder. Or you could cut it and fold it into different shapes. Here I have a rectangular shape, and all I did was a square shape, sorry. I took two pieces of paper and I put them into my square shape. And then I can add a piece on the front and the back. Now, how am I going to attach those? Well, I can attach those using scissors. I can cut them out using the scissors, and then I can attach them either using glue, tape, or another interesting way to attach things is to use other objects you have around your house, like these twist ties that I have, or rubber bands. We often get those through the mail, and we can save them and use them. Now, we've talked about the base, we've talked about tools and materials that we can use, but we haven't talked about what we can use to make the face on here. So, and to create the body. So for that, you can use crayons, markers, and two pieces of paper. Now, I'm trying to keep this fair for everybody because you might have noticed in the last picture I showed, so I'm going to go back and show it, that this great creation was made out of a pumpkin and paint. But not everybody has that at home. So this time I want to make sure that for this challenge, these are things that we all have at home and we don't have to go out and buy anything, and we want to make the challenge fair by using materials that everybody has at home to make wonderful creations. All right, so let's go on to the next slide and get some more hints. So once you've looked around your house and noticed what type of materials you have, I want you to imagine using those materials that are on our list and the tools. How could you make a three-dimensional scarecrow? Again, last time we were allowed to do two-dimensional, And this is a wonderful drawing by another kindergarten student who did it all by themselves. Do you think one of our students did this by themselves? You're right. No, Miss McCormick did that one. So again, we want to focus on how can we do something by ourselves with a little help from our parents or our big brothers and sisters. So what could you do by yourself to make a three-dimensional scarecrow? At school, we would turn and talk to our neighbor about our ideas. So you can go ahead and talk to your family. Who at home could you share what you're imagining? Once you have that in your head, you can go and find a notebook or a piece of paper, and you can draw your sketch on it. I happen to have a whiteboard, so you could use that too, because I know many teachers sent home whiteboards with students, and you could draw your little sketch. So you can see on this idea, for my scarecrow, I drew the cylinder, and I put some crazy hair at the top and his eyes and his nose. Now my older students would be adding labels to theirs because they've learned how to do ABC diagrams. So you can see I'm labeling with hair, eyes, cheeks, mouth, and I think I'm even going to label that with cylinder so I know what 3D shape I'm doing. On the other side of your paper, so you can't turn over the whiteboard, but if you're using paper, you could turn it over and you could do your, draw your materials or write out your materials list. Okay. So now, once we have our materials and tools that we're thinking of, and we have our idea down on paper, it's time to take that idea and turn it into a three-dimensional creation. So you're going to gather all your tools and materials that you need to create your scarecrow and get started. I can't wait to see what you guys create this week. Once you finish with your creation, you're going to look at it and say, what is one thing that could make the scarecrow better? I noticed on this scarecrow, his hat is falling off. So one way that this scarecrow could be improved is by attaching it better using some of the items that were on our list. So again, I could use the twist tie, or I could use the glue or the tape to attach the hat so that it would be secure and not blow off in the strong fall wind. Once we've finished with our creations, it's time to get ready to share them with Miss McCormick. So you're going to take pictures of your plan and your scarecrow, or you're going to send me a recording, which is what most of you do. So you're going to send me a recording of your plan and your scarecrow. Now, I'm going to make myself larger again just to demonstrate how that should be. So I notice a lot of people are moving their plans all around while they're talking and they're going back and forth. Were you able to see the plan? No, and when you do that, I can't either. So one way to do it is to just hold up the plan and talk about it. So talk about what you have. It has the hair, the eyes, the cheeks, the mouth, and it was made out of a cylinder. So I went and read all the labels, and then you can show the final product. So last week, my final product was my pumpkin creation that says Happy Fall, and I can share what I did. So I can share that I painted the can and put little sparkles around it to make it look more Halloween-y with orange paint and then black and white paint. And then I put on the eyes and the eyebrows and the cheeks and a candy corn nose and a wiggly mouth, and then the Happy Fall message. One thing I added at the end to improve it was I noticed that the wire handle just looked kind of plain when everything was so colorful. So I added some what we call thread. Thread used to be on these, so they're called spools. And then I added some bows. My bows are a little bit well loved, so I might need to improve that too. So I can keep looking and seeing how I can improve things. All right, we're going to go back down and we're just going to get the final direction. So after you've told me what is your best thing, whoops, I forgot to show you that. So I think the best thing about my pumpkin, or really jack-o'-lantern because it has a face, is his candy corn nose. So that was my favorite part of mine. So then once that's done, you're going to stop the recording or and then submit. And if it's pictures that you're inserting, you're going to send those to Miss McCormick in the STEAM Schoology course. I am so excited to see all of your projects, and so that we can keep creating, I'm sending home a list this week about materials and tools that you can start gathering at home for our future projects in STEAM class. So I suggest that you get a little box or a crate that you can put your things in, or even a large bag that you can put your items in that you're saving for STEAM class. Now, if your family doesn't want it in the house, putting it out in the garage is a great place so it's not cluttering up your bedroom or your front room. But if you can find a little corner to tuck it into that it's not in the way, that's okay too. So once you figure out if you're going to use a box or a bag to put your things into, I want you to start collecting the things that you normally would put in your recycle bin, like small empty boxes, bottle caps, empty egg cartons, bags, plastic bags, paper bags, plastic containers, water bottles, and these handy twist ties that are part of our challenge this week. You probably already have some of these items around your house, but you can start looking for those too. So pennies are going to be used in a challenge upcoming, so that would be good to look for. You don't have to go buy pennies, whatever pennies you have at home. You don't have to go trade them at the store or go to the bank, just whatever pennies you have at home. We're going to use them for a challenge. Aluminum foil, toothpicks, rubber bands. Look for items around your house that you might be able to create with. And then gather your tools in one area like you do for art class or for your regular classroom teacher when you're drawing things to go with the literature books you're doing in the morning. So you might need a pair of scissors for your math or your literacy. Keeping those all in one spot will really help when it comes to do the next STEAM project. So start gathering these at home, and I'll be sending a list out to all the families soon. I'm updating it this week, and I will get it to you over the weekend. I can't wait to see you and your creations next time I see you in a Zoom meeting. Be sure to bring those creations, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone send their creations to me in Schoology. Have a great week, and I can't wait to see if you decide to do a friendly scarecrow or if you're going to do a fierce and scary scarecrow. Have a great week.